By the voice of the people, Winston Churchill is once again called to guide our destiny at a time of difficult uncertainty.
In 1951, Winston Churchill led the Conservatives back into power.
To him we look to knit us together once again as a united people working for Britain.
By then, around 3,000 Caribbean people a year were making the journey to Britain, and the total black population was estimated to be between 40 and 50,000. Churchill is reported to have said that immigration was the most important subject facing the country, but complained that he couldn't get his ministers to take any notice. But, as government files reveal, Churchill did what he could to make his ministers take notice. Now, the subject of this file is the immigration of coloured workers to Britain, and it has almost the feel of a scrapbook. And through these cuttings, these memos, you can see that this is a subject that Winston Churchill keeps coming back to and keeps pushing onto the government agenda. One paper trail from the autumn of 1952 begins with a cutting from the Sunday Graphic, a report on what is claimed to be the critical problem of the coloured community in Cardiff's Tiger Bay. A week later, another clipping, this time about a pub in Brixton that had banned the local black community from its saloon bar. Now, these are two local stories of not great significance, and yet they provoke a flurry of notes and memos and activity from Churchill, who demands more and more information about these issues and about the issue of coloured people in Britain. A few days later, Churchill brings the subject up at a cabinet meeting, asking whether the post office was employing larger numbers of coloured workers, and observing, if so, there was some risk that difficult social problems could be created.
What does social mean? Social means it's another word for racial.
The Postmaster General reported back directly to the Prime Minister's office with relevant facts and figures. But for the PM, this is not the point. What he wants is for the subject to be brought back to Cabinet for further discussion. He writes, "The numbers you mention, between 5 and 600, are considerable. The Cabinet invited you to report on the matter, so pray circulate a paper accordingly. Signed, WSC, Winston Spencer Churchill." And so, the very next day, the Postmaster General circulates his paper to Cabinet colleagues. His blunt conclusions are both a warning and a prediction about the consequences of the policies that are now up for discussion. He writes, "I submit that this is not purely a post office question at all. It raises the whole issue of whether coloured subjects of the Commonwealth and Empire should be admitted to the country from now on." In Westminster, a chill wind was now blowing. But back in the Caribbean, the sun still shone brightly on the special relationship with the mother country.
It was a place of privilege, a place that when you open your book and you see the Houses of Parliament and Buckingham Palace, you think it's a magical place.
The streets of England are paved with gold. So if the streets of England are paved with gold, wouldn't we want to come and get some? Wouldn't we?
I was going to leave high school, and so my mother said, "Would you like to go to England?" But when she says, "Would you like to go to England?" she means you're going to England. You get what I mean? So I said yes.
Unlike the Windrush pioneers, many of the second wave of migrants travelled by air. But that wasn't the only change. As the BOAC comets touched down, the government machine now had the new arrivals firmly in its sights. But thanks to the 1948 Nationality Act, moving against them was not going to be easy.
Britain has an image that it has to maintain. And the one thing that it cannot do is itself undermine that image by putting into law racist grounds on which to exclude black people coming into the United Kingdom. They cannot admit publicly to being racist. And then we move into a situation in which they find a way to do something racist, which can be said not to be racist.
To square this circle, the government set up an interdepartmental working group, staffed by senior civil servants. The Working Party on Coloured People Seeking Employment in the United Kingdom was asked to gather facts and figures to try and prove that the arrival of coloured people in Britain was a problem, and that immigration controls were therefore needed. One of the assumptions that's made in many of these documents about Commonwealth migrants is that some of them were scroungers, that they'd come to Britain not to work, but to live off the welfare state. But the great problem with that claim is that it was just an assumption, because there was absolutely no evidence to back it up. So in June 1953, at the request of the Working Party, dole officers up and down the country were asked to take part in a secret race survey of people claiming national assistance. The instructions to the dole officers insisted on absolute secrecy. It says, for the purposes of obtaining these statistics, it is important that applicants concerned should be identified solely by observation. On no account should they be questioned about their place of origin or other personal matters. Attached to the instructions was a form on which officials were told to keep running totals of the various racial categories that they had surreptitiously observed. And the week chosen for this secret race survey was the week beginning 15th of June 1953, which was just 2 weeks after Queen Elizabeth had come to the throne as head of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth.
Well, let me tell you, ladies and gents, I enjoyed myself to my heart's content. I could not follow the procession, but I was there to see the coronation. I was there at the coronation. I was there at the coronation. 1,000 guardsmen marching ahead.
In the same coronation year, the working group canvassed the opinions of chief constables in more than 20 major cities the length and breadth of Britain, seeking their professional assessment of the qualities and character of the black community. They were asked, is it true, for instance, that the coloured community as a whole, or particular sections of it, are generally idle? Are they poor workmen? Do they have low standards of living? Do they live under bad conditions? And are they addicted to drug trafficking or other types of crime?
What they were seeking to find was that we were engaged in disproportionately criminality, that we were disproportionately underemployed, that we were avoiding work, that we had come and were disproportionately taking national assistance or employment benefits and so on. All of that is what they wanted to find, and none of it was true.
None of us came from Jamaica think we should accept welfare gift because we came for work. We would like to work. We want to work, and when we go into work, we work.
London Transport has a highly successful scheme which recruits bus conductors from Barbados.
Even as the government struggled to find justifications to keep Caribbean workers out, British businesses were doing what they could to bring them in. An economic boom in the mid-1950s meant the need for willing hands was still acute. Even the NHS was forced to get in on the act, dispatching a junior health minister to Barbados to find more nurses. His name was Enoch Powell.
Enoch Powell came to recruit people for hospitals, anywhere where he could get people to come and work. England need us, so we came. Well, that's what they said. The mother country needs you. Which was a big joke, wasn't it? Anyway, we all came.
One question the working group never considered was the personal sacrifices made by those who decided to leave their homes in the Caribbean and make a go of it in Britain. For many, this meant leaving young families behind.
I left my son with my grandmother. He was 3 years old, yeah. It wasn't an easy decision. But you're young and you think that everything is going to be rosy, and it's not.
But it was the children of the Windrush generation who, not for the last time, would pay the highest price.